Hey, how you doing? My name is Mark, and today I wanted to talk about one of the speeches that that really caught my attention. Now, excuse me, I was in the hospital. I was attacked by a passenger on the bus for work, so I was out. of missed class, so I apologize and apologize to the teacher also. Okay, but back to what I was talking about. I wanted to get a chance to talk about Alex Stitch's speech on animal welfare laws. And it really bothered me when he basically talked about how farm animals in the U.S., the cruelty that they go through compared to Europe and their animal laws, and how farm animals are more neglected from animal cruelty laws, like unless they're a dog or a cat or a domestic animal. Farm animals aren't included. And so I wanted to dive into this more to see what was the problem. Why are the U.S. very different from Europe? And so I did a little research on my own, and I pulled up an article by Michael Ross, who writes for the New York Times. And he wrote an article on January 19th, 2015, and the article was called "The U.S. Research Lab Lets Livestock Suffer in Quest for Profits." And and in the article it talks about a remote research center on the Nebraska plains, and the scientists use surgery and breeding techniques to re-engineer the farm animals to fit the need of the 21st century meat industry. And basically, they treat these animals in a more cruel way. As for instance, sheep. When sheep are first born, they like to be around the mother, around others, and that's how sheep grow and survive. Well, they're trying to take that dependency away from sheep by putting them out in the open by themselves once they're born. And a lot of hunters, I guess, other animals go out and they get some of these sheeps, and they get these sheeps to not be so dependent on them. So that way these sheeps, I guess, they can breed them to make larger meats or so forth. It's a really sad situation from what I heard. But I also got a chance to read an article by a guy named Taryn Bishop. He actually wrote a paper. He goes to Lewis and Clark. He wrote a paper on February 25th, 2017, called "Farm Animal Welfare Laws, USA versus Europe." And in it, I have to disagree with Alex on one thing. Yes, Americans don't really know the severity of how animals are treated in the U.S. However, Americans do care. A survey was conducted in Europe, and it rated that the importance of animal welfare, and over a third in Europe say it's very important. Now, an article on animal rights and public opinion stated that 77% of Americans consider animal protection very or somewhat important. So that's a good thing, even though the laws do not reflect most of these the cruelty of these farm animals. And another thing I do have to disagree with Alex. They do have the laws are still, but the laws aren't really protecting farm animals. But there are some states that do have some very little protection. For instance, states like Florida, Arizona, Oregon, Colorado, they have a law where they will not allow a pig who's especially pregnant to be confined in small space, and they should be able to turn around and so forth. And that statement I got from the World Animal Protection and the Humane Society. They published an article called "Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership," TTIP. And you can find that on www.his.org. And there you would find that they show these different laws in different states where they do protect like pigs to a certain degree, but not really. Also, I pulled up an article on from the ASPCA, and it's the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And they did a polling on farm animals, and they showed that 94% of Americans feel that animals raised for food deserve to live free from cruelty. Now, that's a much higher jump than the last previous one from an article by Mr. Bishop. Also, the sad part, though, is that over 99% of farm animals in the U.S. are raised in factory farms, which means that's basically for profits. So there's no care about the animals. It's just about profits. And so I feel that this is a huge dilemma. I think more people need to address this situation. I think there can be really good changes if we can just focus on the cruelty to animals. And I like to commend Alex on that speech. I mean, he wasn't like it was pretty broad. However, his speech, even though he wasn't dramatic or anything like that, his speech did catch my attention, and I appreciate that because it gave me a chance to review, do some research, and see for myself that he's actually right on the cruelty of animals in the United States compared to Europe. So thank you, Alex, and see you in class.